podcast. I'm Jason Gumpert, editor at msdynamicsworld.com. On this episode, we are talking about how businesses have adapted since 2020 to make sure they can get paid. There has been a rapid decline of paper-based invoicing and payment as vendors have rushed to set up new payment options for their customers. That's according to Versapay's Chief Product Officer, Jason Reed, and Senior Product Manager, Meredith Mitchell, who joined me on this episode. This episode is sponsored by Versapay, and both Jason and Meredith talk about some of the latest thinking around payment modernization and process automation. There are a few key objectives driving automation today, say Jason and Meredith, like the need to get paid on time and to make that process both easy for customers and to keep it united with the rest of business operations in systems like Dynamics 365 Business Central. Jason and Meredith also tell us about some of the more unique trends they are seeing today, like support for migrations to Dynamics 365, finance and supply chain management, and other ways they believe businesses will seek even more optimization around payments in the future. Okay, I'm here with Jason Reed and Meredith Mitchell of Versapay. Why don't we start with some introductions? Hi, Jason. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Jason. Great to be here today.
And hi, Meredith. Welcome.
Hi, Jason. Thanks also for having us. We're really excited to be here. As you said, I'm Meredith Mitchell. I'm a product manager at Versapay.
All right. And I was really looking forward to getting into today's discussion, really to get some perspective from you on what has to have been a really eventful time in the company's history, time in your customers' histories and work lives. A lot of it comes down to sort of the differences, I think, between the pre-pandemic landscape and today. Pre-pandemic landscape for payment support, were there inefficiencies that finance teams were simply living with, felt like they could survive in spite of? Can you tell us a little more about what some of those experiences have been? Any examples, maybe what those were and how they've changed?
I think a lot of things changed for everyone really over the last year and a half or so. But when we've been talking with finance teams, over this time, there's a few things that kind of come to mind. One being that things are a lot easier when you're all kind of in one place together. I think a lot of teams were accustomed to being able to kind of stand up and peep their head over a cube wall and check in with their neighbor, especially in finance teams. So when we're talking about, payments and collections or just AR management, a lot of it is really relationship management, getting to know your customers, and working with them when there are issues or late payments or delays in payments or questions about invoices. And because it can be so relationship heavy, sometimes we lean on each other for that history. Hey, you spoke to so-and-so last week. What did they say? Or did they give you any insight? Or, are we waiting on this? Or what's the problem with that? So that you can have cohesive conversations. But all of a sudden, when people kind of all very abruptly and quickly ended up in remote circumstances, that easy ability to just kind of pop over the wall and talk to somebody and figure out that history or find out those nuances related to that specific account or what's going on with that customer become a lot more challenging. So we've noticed from customers, suppliers that we've been working with, the desire to be able to have more collaborative online platforms where they can be, working with customers and documenting all of those interactions. And having the ability to be able to kind of message back and forth and have it all, again, be online and be referenceable by everybody on the entire team and by the customers themselves, like providing some more transparency to that. But I think that's one kind of, big thing. I have a few other, but Jason, I wonder if you have anything else that kind of stood out in your mind as far as changes.
Thank you, Meredith. One of the biggest ones that comes to mind as an example to kind of put this into context is suppliers that would be receiving payments, kind of pre-pandemic. They were pushing back on kind of some digital forms of payments coming in favor of, I'll call it legacy methods, check, where dollars and the data kind of came together. That check with a remittance stub so they could kind of clearly understand from a cash application perspective, I got $1,000 and it's related to these 4 invoices that are on the stub associated with the piece of paper that just came in. So, believe it or not, kind of pre-pandemic, even in this kind of digital economy that we're moving towards, I was very aware of, medium and larger organizations saying, no, I still want to deal with my payments in this old school kind of way, because it made it easier for me to understand how to do cash application and some of the back office activities. So, that all changed abruptly, like you said, Meredith, in March of 2020, when all of a sudden there was nobody in the office to open that envelope, or there was no way to take a look at that data. That was definitely an inefficiency that I saw pre-pandemic that has changed overnight, where people need to be able to operate remote. And really just all the other things that Meredith sort of talked about in being able to collaborate both internally and externally. So, with our clients, customers, asking those questions about payment or deductions, or, how to apply cash.
Jason, I might even just follow up a little bit on that as well, as I think that previously a lot of companies were giving some options for occasional online payment to their customers, like kind of dipping their toe in that water. They may have primarily been taking payments via check, but maybe they sold online occasionally. Maybe they, had some ways that they'd send some kind of link to be able to pay something online. And a lot of times, because that was their secondary or alternative offering to customers, it was not fully integrated, to their ERP, and therefore required a lot of manual process. But it was manageable because it was kind of like the alternative way of taking a payment versus a traditional check that was received in the mail. And then kind of overnight, when everyone went home and now everybody wants to pay everything online, and that's got to ramp up, those manual processes also became unwieldy quite quickly for a lot of companies, who then said, okay, we need to find a more formal way of really offering digital options for payment and order acceptance and managing, all of our open AR online. And we need to do it quickly, and we need to do it in a way that's not so manual based, that doesn't have they're not going to take even more time from our already overstretched teams.
When it came to the CFO perspective or the treasurer perspective, what were the biggest concerns for that kind of role in your experience with your clients in terms of taking action as a result, and some of those pressures that you just mentioned? Were there common ones that were really key?
Yeah, for sure. I think the first one was, I've got to get paid. That stark reality. There's nobody in the office. There's nobody in my customer's office. I'm used to getting paid in a certain way. I need to get paid. And it was just that kind of sense of urgency that led to just what Meredith was talking about. Suppliers, merchants, who had, dipped their toe in the water. Our phone was ringing off the hook saying, can you please turn on the ability to process a credit card? Can you please get me set up quickly, because it's the only way that I'm going to get paid in a timely fashion. So, I think there was this real sense of urgency from the CFO and the treasurer to just turn on these ways of getting paid, because in light of what was going on sort of in March, April, May of 2020, it was, I've just got to let people pay the way that they can pay, and not be picky about it. Just let them pay the way that they can. And so it was just sort of this immediate reaction that they had to take. And as a result, you live through the balance of 2020 and into 2021, and it's kind of helped with the relationship that the client or the supplier has with the buyer. It's kind of letting them pay the way that they want, and making it really easy for them to know what they owe. So yeah, it was that real sense of urgency that we saw. And as a result, we saw a very significant uptake in credit card transactions or virtual card transactions that buyers wanted to use, because they were happy to take it any way they could get it.
Mm-hmm. It makes me think of a previous podcast episode we did, 6-8 months ago, from the perspective of what Business Central, and one of the topics was what some Business Central customers had done sort of I think it was from the invoice management side of really hustling and making some emergency changes to pay their vendors. And so I'm glad to be talking about this today from the getting paid perspective, because it seems like from what you're saying and from what I've heard elsewhere, just that both sides, both parties in these transactions were both working furiously in those months to get back to being able to conduct business. And it was such a unique situation where both sides, the payers and the payees, were both working to bring these systems online and these new capabilities online quickly.
Yeah, for the most part, customers want to pay. It's not like they're looking to dodge it. They want to pay because they're doing something, at least in the B2B world, where they're doing something for somebody else. And so, they need this constant flow of goods or services from, that wholesale distributor that they buy things from. So yeah, removing the friction in making sure that supporting documents are there that make it easier for the buyer to pay, letting the buyer pay so that they can completely understand what they're being charged for. Like, hey, I got the invoice and I got the supporting documents. I've got everything I need, so I can pay, and then giving them a way to pay that's easy for them. And you're right. It's both sides of the relationship that we're looking to take advantage of, kind of the tools that are out there in the marketplace.
Meredith, when it comes to like customer relationship and customer retention, what is some of the latest thinking on that as it comes to payments and payment modernization?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, this touches on, what Jason was just mentioning, is that most customers want to pay, right? They know that they're buying something and that they're going to have to pay for it. And as the seller, you hope to continue to sell to that buyer. So it's really, payments is as much about the continuation of the relationship as sales. It's really kind of that last step to the whole sales process. And we all know that business and sales in particular is all about relationship building. And this is very much a continuation, of that. How suppliers manage their AR and engage with their customers to try to settle disputes or to try to understand issues or concerns that their buyers have about open invoices, gently nudging them for payment or reminders when needed. These things are, sometimes delicate matters, but things that need to be done and need to be done in a way that helps to hopefully preserve that, absolutely necessary to preserve the relationship, but hopefully to improve the relationship and the interaction between the two. And so I think it's not often thought of, AR departments aren't thought of as a place where customer satisfaction happens, but I think they absolutely need to be. And specifically, when we start talking about, payments, a lot of what we're seeing is really being driven by expectations that are being set in more of what is becoming normal for consumer interactions. We all shifted a lot of our purchasing, online. If we hadn't already been there, most consumers were already doing a lot of online purchasing, but certainly in March 2020, we shifted almost everything to online purchasing, right? And a lot of us started buying things we wouldn't have even, maybe you previously were going into grocery stores and now all of a sudden you're buying your groceries online. But these consumer norms are now kind of seeping into the B2B world, where those same consumers are coming to work and having expectations about being able to interact with their suppliers in a more digital and a more online way. So, when I think about, as Jason was mentioning before, the ability to kind of be able to go in, see your account as a buyer, be able to see all of your open invoices and be able to communicate, ask questions. Maybe you're only paying an invoice partially because there were items missing from it. To be able to facilitate those processes and to provide the extra information, those comments, those questions, the kind of back and forth dialogue, and have it all documented somewhere and all of that be online. Those kinds of tools are things that people are coming to expect. I mean, I know when I purchase something from Amazon, for instance, and there's an issue with it, I don't pick up a telephone to talk to somebody. I do it through the app on my phone. I tell them that the item was incorrect and I want a refund and I want it to be refunded this way. And so that kind of normalization in the consumer world is also starting to be expected more when we come to the B2B world. So I think people are looking for tools to be able to help provide those options to people, again, to increase that customer satisfaction.
Yeah. And I'll share with you some statistics that we've gathered from the marketplace that kind of reiterate or double down on Meredith's comment about, the trends that we've all started to experience in the B2C world are coming across loud and clear into how B2B wants to operate. And the survey that we took a look at said that the average age of somebody that would like to pick up the phone versus being able to self-service online is 70. And so, with millennials being the largest part of the workforce now, everything needs to be able to be done online and, self-service 24/7. And I do believe it is something that contributes to customer retention. One of the CFOs of one of our clients. Basically, one of his big drivers was that he knew that he was the last or the most frequent interaction with the customer. And so having a very efficient way for customers to come online, understand what they owe and all the supporting materials, and an easy way to make payment or pay the way that you want. It really, for him, it was a big contributor to the satisfaction that their clients or their customers had. And that whole experience that all of us have really become accustomed to that Meredith talked about, like with Amazon.
Well, that's interesting that you mentioned the CFO, Jason, because I did want to get more perspective on that. And it's interesting that you started with sort of the customer experience side of it. But I would imagine for the CFO, for financial management advantages in general, that there are others that come along with modernizing payment as well. Can you talk about that side of the financial executive's goals?
It really comes down to a couple of really simple things when you think about it. Cash flow. The CFO is constantly thinking about, how do I make sure that there's enough cash coming into the business and that there's enough money there to fund the things that we need to, inventory or, payroll or other things, raw materials if they're a manufacturer. And so when CFOs are looking at our platform and looking at, doing these, the sorts of projects, they're looking at, hey, how is this going to reduce the average days for somebody to pay? What impact is it going to have on my cash flow? As a result of having, increased cash flow, what are the other things I'm going to be able to do within my business? And, you could take it, double click down to saying, if that customer that I've extended credit to is paying faster, maybe all of a sudden I could be selling more to them without having to increase the risk that I take on by extending them better credit terms or more credit terms from, X dollars to X plus dollars. When CFOs are engaging with us and looking at these things, it's first and foremost about, reducing the average days to pay, or day sales outstanding is the other way of thinking about that key metric that CFOs are very engaged around. And then ultimately how that contributes to cash flow and, the strength of the balance sheet, converting AR to cash, and then how that cash can be used by the corporation or the organization to do the other things that they're looking to do as a company. So there's 100% focus on those sorts of things, along with, just the other opportunities to streamline their operations by having the customer online be able to collaborate back and forth and say, no, I'm looking to do this and this with that invoice and apply the cash that way, versus guessing that sometimes results in rework that's got zero value add. So it's all about being able to streamline their operations and have a very significant impact on cash flow. And those are probably the two biggest drivers that CFOs or that financial organization is really thinking about, in addition to the customer experience.
Another area I wanted to get your input on, since I think it's very relevant both to the Dynamics customer and the Dynamics ERP customer and partners as well, from what really driven a lot by what you're hearing from Microsoft and some of the product advances they make, is so much of it is around either automating processes or totally transforming them, I guess, depending on the outlook that any particular organization has and what that means for organizations overall. I mean, have you done any thinking about that? And can you just share some of the latest outlook when it comes to process? Meredith, do you want to take this one?
Sure, absolutely. We've been doing some really interesting surveying of customers and potential customers and talking to a lot of AR departments and folks who are working in those departments, folks who are leading those departments. And yeah, you hear a lot about the need for automation, but really more so, I think we're realizing, a total transformation of how we're managing, AR in general. And, my understanding is that I think that, like many different industries, the idea of automation can be exciting and also worrisome, depending on where you are in that organization. For folks, who are doing the work, sometimes it can be a little concerning because you might think, well, if they're going to automate all of this work, then what happens to my job and to the security of the place that I hold in the workforce? But when we talk to leadership, that's not at all how they are seeing the drive towards, transforming and further automating AR processes. I don't think anybody, I have not yet heard of departments who are looking to downsize. I think they recognize that a lot of the work that happens in these departments is often, fairly manual, repetitive work. And that they know the people who are doing it need to be pretty highly skilled to be able to apply all of this correctly, because you need to make sure, that the payments get put to the right invoices. It's very serious and important work that's being done, but it can be, rather tedious. And so I think that the goal for everybody is, management in particular, is to try to alleviate a lot of that manual labor and free up those folks to be able to do other work that can be contributing more significantly to the overall corporate mission. I don't think there's any AR departments out there that are not terribly busy. And so there's other work that they could be doing that's more maybe rewarding and more contributing towards the corporation growing, in other areas.
I would add to that, Meredith, exactly what you're saying. It's taking people who are really busy doing a lot of things related to collections or other things and being able to automate that. And so two things happen as a result of that automation is they can now take the time and energy to create insights and actionable insights from what they see happening, because there's tons of data now that can be used, and looking at those actionable insights to drive continuous improvement inside the business, and really focus, within that AR process on those who cannot or will not pay you. And by really focusing on that, again, that's a key thing that the CFO or the whole company is interested in is, the risk of bad debt. And so if you can automate a lot of the things and provide self-service to, those great customers that you've got, and you can focus on those who just cannot or will not pay you, that too is a huge benefit to the company, because we've given the capacity for them to do that, or, just be much more analytical and have insights that are actionable, that too can improve the overall quality of the business.
Jason, you mentioned earlier, but I want to return to it, some of the things that it sounds like your customers have been asking you for when it came to becoming more digital, especially if it was in a rush or early to mid 2020, like, can we turn on credit card transactions, right now or yesterday? Are there things like that you heard from existing customers, maybe from new customers who were under pressure that you've responded to in either in terms of features, ways to support clients based on some of those, urgent needs, things that have really changed the way they needed to work?
One of the first things that I'll bring up is mobile. While a lot of the functionality that gets used by the supplier is still really desktop oriented, we realized that the people who are coming in and needing to make payments, they were all over the place, and they were on many different kind of form factors, whether it was a mobile phone, a tablet, or maybe a desktop app, at their home offices they were working. And so we put a little bit of time and effort into making sure that our customer portal, where people come in to make payments and take a look at those invoices, was built in a tech stack that was reactive to the type of device that the customer was on, and fed the data up in a way that was easy for them to see. It wasn't like it was opening up a desktop browser on their iPhone and having to swipe all around, to find out where they were trying to do stuff. It was serving it up based on the size of that form factor. So it was really easy for them to, again, see what they owed and make a payment against it. So that's one of the things that the organization did, to make it easy and just provide that great experience. Because I'm going back to what Meredith said midway through the conversation. We got used to doing that kind of stuff with Amazon. And so we needed to create that same kind of experience for those folks in the B2B space. So that's kind of one of the first ones that comes to mind. And I think that, we got very, very good. We often say that we've got a PhD in integrations, because we realized that this data was in a number of different locations, whether it was at a bank with a lockbox file, or if it was credit card batch and settlement information that was coming in from a processor that helped with the bank reconciliation process. So it's just doubling down again on making sure that all the different sources of data, we could grab them, put them into Dynamics in a way that could be easily used by the supplier merchant to run their business. So those would be kind of some of the things that are top of mind for me. Meredith, anything from your perspective?
Yeah, I was going to further harp on the integration to the ERP. So, Jason, you were saying we take data from a lot of different places, but when we talk about, what's important to leadership, management in finance departments, those folks often are still working out of Business Central, out of their ERP. And so ensuring that ERP remains, your one source of truth, regardless of how you're accepting payments from all of your customers, is of great importance, and something that we have been very, focused on as we continue to diversify and offer all these, options for customers to digitize their finance department. We will always want to make sure that we keep an eye on the ERP, making sure that it's in sync and that it is truly the one source of truth for those finance leaders.
All right, excellent. Since I have both of you here as product leaders, I guess the only other thing I'd wonder is, is there anything else on the horizon that you have your eye on coming out of a really exciting, or that's the wrong word, but very busy and sort of urgent last 15 months or so? What are you looking to next?
One of the biggest areas that we see is, we all know paper is going to decline over time. So physical checks are going to decline and those checks are going to get replaced with either virtual cards or ACH transactions. And those transactions are going to also have remittance information travel along with the digital transaction. So instead of, perhaps an ACH transaction showing up in your bank account and an email in your inbox, maybe that stuff will start to travel together. Folks talk about ISO standards like 20022 to do that, or, there's many different payment platforms out there that represent, sort of mid and large size buyers. So we see as paper declines being, on the forefront of connecting to those payment networks or those sources of digital payments that, we think about them as smart payments where remittance and dollars travel together, and being able to integrate to those points so that, one, we can deliver the invoice to those AP systems or other systems that need that information digitally, but then also integrate and get information on the back end to put back into the ERP for cash application and move all the way through to their settlement account for, cash into the bank, and then pull the right information back into the ERP to help with bank reconciliation. So I think the thing that's on the horizon for us is just all the paper that's going to continue to disappear, and making sure that we're connected to the other endpoints for both sending and receiving that digital information, help with the entire accounts receivable process. That's sort of top of mind for me. I think one of the other big outcomes that we're looking to do, and really supporting the Microsoft ecosystem, is taking what we've historically done and now supporting F and SCM. So, all of the things that might happen inside of an organization that needs to take payments, all of the things perhaps outside, whether it's through e-commerce, again, needing to feed that back into the ERP, or if they sell on account and what that invoice to cash process looks like, and being able to integrate with lock boxes or banks. We've doubled down on our Microsoft investment. And so for those in the Microsoft ecosystem that might be looking at moving from one platform to FNS CM, we want to provide that same experience. So we've made a big investment, and we're really tied into the Microsoft ecosystem and supporting all of the users.
Yeah, that's really interesting, that transition off. And when you talk about customers who move between them, or perhaps who adopt, like you said, F and SCM instead of Business Central, oftentimes they do have more complex needs, from what I understand, multi-company or multi-location, or working in operations worldwide, things like that, right?
Multi-currency and other things.
Multi-currency.
Yeah. Yes, we've made those investments because we understand that, we've had this great product. We keep adding to it, but we wanted to support those that are maybe, have said to us in the past, I'm moving from this platform to that one. Can you provide a solution for me? Or the VAR community that's around that ecosystem as well. So that's something that Meredith has been shepherding for us, her and John Cooper. And, we're really excited about that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We're really excited to be moving in that direction. And like Jason said, it's been a long time coming for folks who've been keeping their eye on ChargeLogic payments and now Versapay payments. So we're excited to be in that new space and be servicing those customers and the partners who are supporting them.
So I did want to ask for a bit of an update on the work you've done in the merger of ChargeLogic and Versapay, the work that's gone on since that announcement was made. Jason, can you give us the latest?
So in February of 2020, ChargeLogic and Versapay came together. ChargeLogic has this expertise inside of the Microsoft ecosystem around, payments inside the ERP, point of sale, e-commerce. And Versapay had historically worked kind of where the ERP had left off in the accounts receivable to kind of the invoice to cash space around collections and collaboration and cash application. And so by bringing the two together, we've got this embedded solution inside of the Microsoft application that extends out to meet kind of, more of the needs of those who sell on account. And it's been a fantastic two organizations coming together to service the Microsoft ecosystem. And as a result, more dollars to invest in R&D and being able to take what we had done within Nav and extend it out to F and SCM now so that, we can support even more of the Microsoft ecosystem.
Anything else you wanted to add or call attention to before we wrap up here? I really appreciate you both taking the time to chat today. It's been fun.
Just thank you. I think it's always great to talk to people who are looking to improve how they're working with their ERP. We see everything that we do is where the ERP leaves off, we kind of try and pick up and extend out to create a better experience and more tech around the payment, how you can optimize that payment to save on merchant services or, the entire accounts receivable process that we kind of talked about here today. So just thank you for the forum and thank you for the opportunity to kind of share some of the things that we do.
Yeah, absolutely. I second that. Thank you very much for the opportunity to come to talk. And like I said, I'm a long-time listener, first-time caller. So it's really lovely to be here and to be talking about the exciting, changes that we have going on and a lot, in the future for Versapay as we continue to improve our product and to hopefully continue to bring more and more ERPs online. So thanks very much.
This has been another episode of the MSDW podcast. My thanks once again to Jason Read and Meredith Mitchell of Versapay for joining me. For more information on Versapay, please visit versapay.com. And that's it for this episode. If you have any feedback or ideas for future episodes, please do get in touch with me, jgumpert@msdynamicsworld.com. You can also follow all of our activities and latest news and information online on Twitter and on LinkedIn. Until next time, this is MS Dynamics World, signing off.